Well,
Good afternoon, everyone. This is the monthly meetup. Sometimes we do it virtually, sometimes we do it in person. Obviously, today is virtual, in case you didn't notice. I was given some questions ahead of time. I'm going to go through the questions. Meanwhile, anyone who's attending, if you have some additional questions, please send them in. Lindsay, how do people send questions?
they can post them in the Facebook chat.
Post them in the Facebook chat,
They can post them in the YouTube chat,
post them in the YouTube chat,
or they can send them via social media.
or they can send them via social media. So thank you all for being here. I always find this a little awkward because I feel like I'm just talking to a screen instead of talking to real people. But let's go to it. So these were the questions I got. This is the order I got them, and it's not edited. The first question, will Chairman Mendelson commit to introducing a ceasefire resolution? If not, will he commit to never introducing another resolution that touches on international affairs ever again? The first part of the question, will Chairman Mendelson commit to introducing a ceasefire resolution? I will not. I have said consistently that I would not. I believe that it would be of little, very little value. It would be extremely controversial. It would take a lot of time, and the benefit of it is negligible. At this point, the president has called for a ceasefire. The UN has called for a ceasefire. Countries around the world have called for a ceasefire. I don't think anybody's listening to the Council of the District of Columbia. And if we make a statement, it would have, I cannot imagine what the impact would be. It's so negligible in terms of either US foreign policy or decisions by the state of Israel. And as I said, it would be very controversial. So for little value, a lot of controversy. The second part, if not, will he commit to never introducing another resolution that touches on international affairs ever again? No, I will not. In the past, where the council has made a statement, it has not been controversial. If such a situation were to occur again, that's not controversial, in fact, widely celebrated, then perhaps there would be a resolution. So I won't make a blanket commitment to not ever introduce ever again. Next question, what is the council planning to do to ensure that the DC Pay Equity Fund is continued and families like ours can stay in DC? I am committed to restoring the funding for the Pay Equity Fund. I am going to sit down with some experts and see if the funding can be adjusted. But the cut was roughly $207 million. That's what the mayor needed in order to fund the reserves, a move that which both the mayor and I disagree, but was forced by the chief financial officer. And that's what I'm working toward, is to restore it. I can't make more of a commitment than that until the council votes, but it is my intent to present a budget to the council for a vote that would restore or continue the pay equity program. Next question. I am deeply saddened and concerned to hear that the city is not moving forward with the installation of bike lanes on the northern portion of Connecticut Avenue. Continued support of car-centric urban design is detrimental to our communities and planet. This is a backward-looking decision, and I would like to know what you are doing to remedy it. So there's several parts to this question. With regard to the decision by DDOT, this is not an issue where I'm going to step in and work against DDOT on this. I've heard arguments on both sides. I generally stayed out of weighing in to try to affect the balance or the equation. But now that DDOT has made a decision, I don't intend to get involved to undo that. But also in this question is continued support of car-centric urban design is detrimental. That sounds like that's coming from a view that we need to make driving difficult and unpleasant. And I will reiterate what I have said many times. I think there are advantages to bicycling, to walking, to other modes of transportation, and let me not leave out public transit. But I think the correct approach is for the government to make those alternatives more attractive rather than trying to make driving difficult and unpleasant. The next question, when is the streetcar extension to Benning Road Metro Station going to start construction? The mayor in her budget proposal includes capital projects like the streetcar extension. My understanding is that it is her intention that work will proceed with regard to the bridges that are involved with the extension. And this has been a topic in the past. I remember a year ago, people got in a lather because they thought the council was blocking the rebuilding of what was then called the Whitlock Bridge, which is Benning Road over Kenilworth and the railroad tracks. So my understanding, which we were not doing, my understanding is that the executive intends to proceed with that work. It's not clear when the streetcar extension would begin thereafter. So my answer is, well, bridges first and not clear when streetcar extension follows. Next question, can you please discuss whether MPD can do more to enforce moped operators who don't have tags yet drive dangerously and with impunity? MPD just repeats the same old excuse that they can't chase. Mopeds are not fast vehicles, yet MPD never turns on their lights to pull them over. I share the view and frustration of the questioner. And I am adding this to my list of issues to discuss the next time I meet with the chief of police, which is roughly monthly. Because I too question why it is that I am driving and I see one of these mopeds or motorcycles that doesn't have tags, and it is illegal to drive on our streets without tags, and nothing seems to happen. So I will ask the chief and press her on this. Next question. I understand that significant overarching healthcare legislation has been passed by the mayor's office and the council. I'm concerned that various practitioners have lost their boards and may not have a voice in the practice of their professions in the district. In addition, many perceived barriers to practice have been removed. How do I, as a resident, know that these changes won't impact negatively the quality of healthcare in the district? What advantages do you foresee from these changes? How do I answer that question? The mayor with the health department or the health department through the mayor proposed changes to these boards, these healthcare licensure boards, believing that this would improve the situation, healthcare situation in the district, not healthcare in terms of outcomes and patients, but healthcare in terms of practicing and the ability to practice in the district. So experts at the Department of Health believe that this will improve things. The Committee on Health, chaired by Councilmember Henderson, had a hearing, and this was sometime last year. And through the hearing and comments that were received, many of which were critical, the Health Committee came to the conclusion that some of the changes, maybe even most of the changes recommended by the Department of Health, should be adopted in law. So they move forward, and that's what the questioner is asking about, is this legislation. It wasn't actually passed by the mayor. It was introduced by the mayor and passed by the council. I think final reading is in the first Tuesday in May. So presumably going through this process, coming from the Department of Health, committee hearing, committee markup, consideration of comments, pro and con, presumably that these changes won't impact negatively the quality of healthcare in the district. The other part of the question is, what advantages do you foresee from these changes? Well, the department thought and the committee agreed that some of the changes would increase efficiency and also would bring up to date the scopes of practice that are regulated in the healthcare field. Next question, which is very much related. Regarding the bill, Bill 25-545, let me restate that, Bill 25-545. The bill proposes the consolidation of the Board of Physical Therapy, Board of Occupational Therapy, and Board of Speech Therapy into the Board of Rehabilitation Therapies. What specific advantages or benefits is anticipated from consolidating the two? The proposal was made because the Department of Health noted that there have been 19 health professional licensing boards, which are responsible for reviewing applications, recertifications, and complaints, overseeing investigations and disciplinary hearings, and advising the mayor on regulations related to the professions under their jurisdiction. The legislation proposes a number of changes, including decreasing the total number of boards to 12 by merging and repealing several boards and changing the membership of boards. DC Health has proposed these changes to increase administrative efficiency, make the number of licenses overseen by each board more uniform, and decrease the high vacancy rates of certain board seats. I'm looking if I can add. So I took that from the committee report. And I would recommend to the questioner and anyone else who's interested, if you want a fuller understanding of the reasoning, go to the committee report. That's much better than asking me to restate it. The committee report is available by going to the council's website, www.dccouncil.gov, clicking on legislation and laws, clicking on Legislative Information Management System or LIMS, and then typing in B 25-545. Scroll down and click on the committee report, and it does say something like 800 pages, but much of that would be testimony. But go through the report and you will understand the reasoning. Next question. We have money for an arena downtown, but not for school renovations. Why aren't we prioritizing schools over sports teams? Well, that's a good question and a complicated question. And actually, the answer is that the government is many things to many people. I know that sounds a little trite and that's a little simplistic, but the government wants a active and vibrant downtown. And active and vibrant downtown actually spins off a whole lot of revenue to the city. And that revenue in turn pays for a lot of other programs, such as public education. So that's part of the answer. Related to that is the fact that when Monumental Sports announced that they were moving to Virginia, overwhelmingly people were disappointed or upset or angry, even angry. So there were some who might have said good riddance, or we don't need to pay for an arena. But by far, that was not the public sentiment. But more important than that, when Monumental announced that it was moving, people started to think about what that would mean for downtown and the hole it would create in terms of economic activity, particularly the eastern end of downtown. So there are a lot of values to having the arena, and that is why the city has put forward $500 million over 3 years, spread over 3 years, divided up among 3 years. I know it's a little bit more, 515, because that includes some $15 million in improvements to the public space around the arena. By contrast, the mayor's budget for FY25 is $554 million for school renovations. And over the 6-year capital improvement plan, it's $2.65 billion. Again, $2.65 billion for school renovations. Next question. Why would DPW close my 311 request to ticket tow a car parked in my alley, blocking 6 homeowners' cars from leaving. I watched for the vehicle owner and parking enforcement for over an hour, yet no one came from DPW and already closed the 311 call. What gives? I haven't a clue what gives. I can't imagine how frustrating. I can't imagine how frustrating this was. If you want more of an answer, I would suggest that the questioner contact my office. The email, I believe, is chairmancs@dccouncil.gov with specifics, particulars like when the call was made, ideally what time the call was made, as well as the date, and the alley, the name of the alley, and we can pursue why it was closed. The fact of the matter is it shouldn't have been. It was a mistake, whether it was sloppiness or an honest mistake or true negligence, I don't know. But that should not happen. And in fact, the council's heard a lot of complaints about 311, and the council would like to see the mayor improve the 311 system. Those were all the questions we got before this meetup. Lindsay, what's next?
All right, a couple of school questions. Will you commit to restoring teaching positions at School Without Walls, which is not losing students, and to repealing the mayor's efforts to repeal the School First in Budgeting Act? Please tell the community your intentions.
I don't know if you all heard the question, but the mayor has proposed repealing the Schools First in Budgeting law. And the question was whether I would commit to rejecting that. It is my intention to present before the council a budget support act that would not include that repeal. That's my intention. And I believe I can do that because there was no fiscal impact associated with it. With regard to committing to restoring the teaching positions at School Without Walls, I will not commit to restoring funding at an individual school. It is my intention to restore as much, if not all, of the funding that has been taken away from schools in the mayor's proposed budget. I could say that better. We have the ability to calculate what each school's budget should be under the Schools First law. And the Schools First in Budgeting law says that schools are not cut, that schools actually get an increase if the UPSFF, that's the funding formula, is increased. So we'll do that calculation. And then I'm hopeful that we'll be able to apply that to all of the schools. That would include School Without Walls. I think it's crazy that the chancellor blithely states that he supports education and improving schools and equity and transparency, and yet year after year he comes forward with budgets that actually cause schools to have to lay off staff. School Without Walls is one of the worst, but not the only one. Out of 117 schools, maybe 80 are having to lay off people, and many of them are schools that are seeing either the most negligible drop in enrollment, like 5, 10 people, or seeing an increase, like you said with School Without Walls. In my view, it's inexcusable and it's harmful, it's counterproductive, it's mean, it forces educators to leave schools because how do they know that the funding will be restored? And this year, when we restored the funding, some of the schools still have not gotten all of their funding, and this is April. So it's quite angering, and I am going to do everything I can to make every school whole as provided in the Schools First law, and that should include School Without Walls.
Can you please repeat your details about your efforts to submit a new budget proposal in regards to the pay equity fund?
Please repeat what I said about pay equity.
Mm-hmm.
It's my intention to present to the council when we have our first vote on the budget, which is, I think, May 28th, a budget that would include restoring funding for the pay equity fund. When I say restoring, there may be some adjustments because I've heard some suggestions for improvement or for how do I want to put this, more efficiency. It's not my idea to do some cuts pretending that it's justified by efficiency. That's not where I'm going to go. But when I say restore, I mean that this program will continue and that it will be able to continue on all cylinders.
So circling back to the occupational therapy boards bill, the questioner asks, it appears that MOTA could improve its processes in securing volunteers to serve on boards. Many boards have vacancies that could have been filled. However, MOTA has had issues filling the boards in a reasonable amount of time. People want to serve, however, MOTA can take up to 2 years or more to vet and place that person.
I'm not going to defend. So the question is a follow-up on the question about the health licensing boards. And the follow-up question challenges that MOTA, Mayor's Office of Talent and Appointments, is inefficient. Yeah, I sent some of that, and I've had some frustration trying to get appointments out of them. I gave them suggestions for the Historic Preservation Review Board last October, and they didn't come to us until a month ago. And that was after the Historic Preservation Review Board had lost its forum in January. So I'm not going to defend MOTA. On the other hand, I have heard Councilmember Henderson, the chair of the Health Committee, say on several occasions over the past year that some of these boards are difficult to fill because we have a number of requirements, such as the regulated health profession credentials, as well as residency in the district. And on some of the boards, there might even be a geographic requirement, like somebody from Ward 8 or something like that. Not sure with all these boards, but these requirements significantly reduce the pool of eligible applicants, which makes it more difficult. So that has to be considered as well.
Couple questions about Monumental and downtown. Monumental was supposed to leave, so the mayor wanted to bring back businesses downtown, but now that Monumental is back, what is the status of downtown revitalization?
What is the status of downtown revitalization? The status of downtown revitalization is it's still in progress. There is a downtown task force co-chaired by Jody McLean and Debbie Ratner-Salzberg that hopes to have their report by the end of this calendar year. There are a number of strategies that are being looked at. The mayor's put some proposals in her budget. I'm not sure that they all are truly effective, but there are a number of efforts on varying fronts to contribute to or to help to stoke the revitalization of downtown. I don't know if that's answers the question, but it's kind of hard to answer such a general question more specifically.
Another monumental question, is there evidence that the arena brings in significantly over $500 million in associated tax revenue over the next 3 years? And also, for that money that is going for refurbishments, will the city require that the contractor hire a majority of DC residents or returning citizens?
Yeah, so there's several parts to the question, and you're going to have to repeat some of it. So I do not know the answer about whether the construction will require hiring of returning citizens or DC residents. Generally, we have a first source requirement, which is district residents are the first source for hiring. That law doesn't apply to returning, it doesn't include specifically returning citizens. It speaks to DC residents. But all that's been agreed to at this point is a term sheet which has the concepts for the arena, which is the concepts are 500 million or 515 million, and then certain other features. All that has to get negotiated into a lease extensions and probably some other agreements. The lease extensions will come to the council. The other agreements probably do not. That would be, for example, what agreement regarding traffic flow or agreement concerning public safety, provisions for public safety. I have gotten some feedback that people downtown are feeling much safer in the area of the arena these days. There was more to that question. Whether it would generate $500 million in tax revenue over the next 3 years? No, it will not. On a nominal basis, my recollection is that it will, over the next 20 years, bring in well over $1 billion in revenue, tax revenue. But there are a lot of collateral benefits, that is, other businesses that operate. So this is anecdotal, but it illustrates the point that when Monumental announced it was leaving, there was a restaurant that said they were going to close because they wouldn't have the business. When Monumental said that they were going to stay, the restaurant said that they will remain open. The point being that Monumental's presence with what, 20,000 people a night, many nights. I think it was 300,000 in the month of March. That supports a lot of other businesses in the area of the arena. And I know that our budget office did some analysis. I don't know specifically the question, but they looked at the whether we would make up for the economic impact through other activities if the arena was gone. And the answer is it would be a fraction of what the arena generates.
I'm very concerned about the impact cutting ERAP funding will have on the already dramatically increasing rates of eviction in DC. Given that the FY24 level ERAP funding was actually $63 million. What is your plan to address the demonstrated need for additional ERAP funds in FY25?
But what is my plan for addressing the additional needs for emergency rental assistance? My plan is to see what we can do in the budget. I like these questions and the way they're phrased. We've had the budget for maybe 2 weeks, and we are spending this month with the committees having hearings, so it's too soon to say exactly what's going to happen, which is sort of implicit in the question, what is my plan? But I do intend very much to see how much money we can put into emergency rental assistance. I'm disturbed that with this budget, I don't think there is a coherent plan or strategy by the executive to reduce the housing instability that exists in our city, drastically reducing ERAP, continuing to maintain rapid rehousing, which is short-term housing for people who are homeless. And because it's short-term, it doesn't solve the homeless problem. Other cuts that they have, I don't see what their plan is. And all I can say is we're going to do the best we can to see if we can come up with something by May 28th. Lindsay?
What do you think DC can do to help the Rosemount Center stay open? And is there anything more you think the community can do to help?
The question has to do with Rosemount and what the council could do to help. So for those who may not know, Rosemount is a daycare center or childcare center that is at the intersection of Klingel and Park roads. And why am I blanking? I think there's a third road there. The Rosemount has operated for decades at that location. I think it's over 100 pre-kindergarten students. And Rosemount announced it was going to close at the end of this school year. The community has really stepped up and shown energy to try to come up with funding and keep it in operation. Maybe sort of the community taking over the operation. I think the council can help a little bit. The most recent conversation I had with Councilmember Nadeau she and I jointly introduced legislation to try to help, is maybe the city contribute a small amount of matching funds for the community to fundraise and the Rosemount Center to fundraise to keep the lease in place for a year. And during that year, explore options for purchasing the property, which probably would not be purchased by the city. Lindsay?
What are your thoughts on how to decrease crime and improve safety at metro stations, especially providing safe transportation options for students and families?
Well, the question has to do with increasing public safety at metro stations. Metro has its own police. And if the question is focusing on police stations, and it really would be Metro Police, there has been improved interaction with MPD. More generally, I think we reduce crime at Metro stations, Metro facilities, as we reduce crime generally across the city. And strategies for that are to increase the case closure rate. I remain concerned that MPT is not, and the mayor is not focused enough on that. When the mayor keeps sending down bills, and she's now sent down some more bills to revise the criminal code or the laws regarding the criminal laws, the laws that we have in effect are the same laws we had in effect 12 years ago when the number of homicides was 88. The laws are not the problem. It has to do with law enforcement. The fact that there are fewer police doesn't help. This is a national problem. There's a national shortage of police officers. We are doing, as far as I know, we're doing everything that all the other jurisdictions in this area are doing to try to attract police, except we're not dumbing down our standards because we'll pay for that in the long run through bad cops. So that's part of the problem, but the case closure rate has been below the national average. I don't have those statistics fresh in my mind, but as I recall, something like a third of felonies result in an arrest. I know that it's something like less than a quarter of robberies result in an arrest. Even homicides, it's somewhere around 50% result in arrest within 12 months. The greatest deterrence to crime is not long sentences. I mean, my God, we have a mandatory minimum of 30 years for first-degree homicide. Actually, people don't get prosecuted for first-degree homicide. So sentences are not a deterrent effect, but swift and certain justice is. And that means closing cases and prosecuting them promptly, swift and certain. That does have a deterrent effect. And when a person can kill somebody else, shoot and kill, and know they have a 50% chance of not getting arrested in a year, that's not very much of a deterrent. There's not a whole lot of deterrence there. So increasing the case closure rate and increasing the prosecutions. There have been some statistics I've seen. If you take the total number of police and the total number of arrests and you divide one into the other, the number of arrests per police officer was at an all-time low last year. All-time is maybe exaggeration, but the lowest had been in a decade or this century. So, more aggressive policing with arrests and more aggressive prosecutions, that'll make a difference. And to me, that's the number one and number two strategy. Number three could be the police building more trust with the community. Why do I mention that? Because when the community trusts the police, witnesses come forward, police are in a better position to close cases. So that's important. A few years ago, there was a homicide, a shooting across the street from where I live at a recreation field between people who knew each other, who'd been playing football, and they got into an argument and one shot the other, and they were on two teams playing football, but somehow there were no witnesses. Well, that speaks to the lack of trust in police. People will come forward when they trust the police. So the police have to work at that. And that's not so much a criticism that police are mean and horrible, rather it is urging that the police really make that a priority of building trust in relationships with the community. Next question.
There have been several truancy and absenteeism bills introduced. This seems to be a huge issue in DC. Do you think any of these new laws will really help this issue that seems to be getting worse every year?
Truancy, increasing issue, a number of bills introduced. Do I think that the bills will make a difference for a situation that's been getting worse every year? Well, it's gotten really bad, but got in the last year gotten a little bit better. Just want to say the trend is not getting worse every year. This is a serious issue in my view for criminal justice reasons as well as education. Let me explain. If kids are in school, they're not learning. So we want kids in school. We don't want them absent. But also kids who are missing school unexcused, particularly younger kids, are sending a message that maybe all is not well and that the city ought to take a look and see why it is that the kid is missing school. Kids who get in trouble with the juvenile justice system almost invariably are kids who've been truant. So a way that we can proactively identify kids who are at risk of getting into the criminal justice system is to pay attention when they start missing school, as in 10 or more absences unexcused. Pay attention and figure out what's going on so that if there is something that actually suggests a risk factors, that the city intervenes then rather than waiting until the juvenile has to be arrested. I'm not sure I'm explaining this very well, but I just think it's tragic. A lot of these kids who get arrested, and the city could have stepped in years earlier and gotten those kids back on track. And when I say criminal justice, I'm not talking about truancy being criminal. I'm talking about this being a way of recognizing kids at risk. So much more needs to be done. There are a number of bills introduced. We're going to have a roundtable with invited guests only, invited witnesses only in May, somewhere around May 13th, I think. And then we will have a hearing after we're done with the budget. And the hearing will not be limited in terms of witnesses.
What are your suggestions on the city's options to intervene in truancy?
Well, a kid, what are my suggestions for options? Younger kids tend to miss school because of something in the family. Older kids tend to miss school, meaning high school kids, less because of the family, other dynamics. But generally, kids who are missing school aren't doing well. And when I say doing well, they're not doing well in school. It's not so frequent that a straight A kid is truant. And so we need to intervene early so we get them back into school. Now, what do those interventions mean? And that's what the question was. It could be that the younger kids are missing school because transportation is difficult. I was advised last week of a family, I think there are 3 kids. 2 of them have special needs, so they get bus transportation to school. All 3 go to the same school. The 3rd kid does not get bus transportation because that kid doesn't have special needs. So it doesn't get bus transportation, so that 3rd kid isn't going to school, which is, in my view, just ridiculous. And I am intending to talk to the superintendent about this. Because the city ought to step in and help with transportation if that's the reason. And I don't quite know what that means in terms of help. You have to look at it on an individual basis. Or it could be that the parent thinks it's okay to keep Johnny home to take care of the younger sibling who's got a cold. Or even I've heard this where the parent is feeling sort of depressed and just wants Johnny to stay home and keep him or her company. And in that case, the intervention could be counseling the parent that he or she, probably she, needs to make sure the kid gets to school, that there are consequences for the kid, meaning that the kid isn't going to learn and is going to fall behind and end up failing or dropping out. Other interventions, this may sound a little silly for some, but there are parents who are embarrassed to send their kids to school with dirty clothes. So the solution there could be to have a washing machine at the school or to give the parent a washing machine. Yeah, that might sound a little strange to give the parent a washing machine, but if it's a difference between the kid failing or the kid, having a chance to fully succeed in school, the cost of a washing machine is worth it, in my view. So it's looking at, is it transportation or something with the mother? In worst case, there would be some abuse or neglect at home, and that needs to be caught as well.
Is the Tax Revision Commission finished with their work? Couldn't a report from them have helped during this budget season?
Is the Tax Revision Commission finished with their work? Couldn't a report from them have helped? The Tax Revision Commission was on track to make recommendations late last year or in January, but they reached an impasse within the commission. So my understanding is they're going to start up again. What does that mean? I don't want to say start over as in start from the beginning, but try to, I think they've taken a little time out and then come back to the table and see if they can come up with recommendations. It's unfortunate that they couldn't have their recommendations. I am concerned that their recommendations, even though not adopted, let me put it this way, their proposals were put out in the public domain, and there are some advocates and council members who are cherry picking that with an eye towards some tax increases now. And I'm concerned that, among other things, that may interfere with the ability, which was part of the Tax Revision Commission's mission, to create more equity in the system. So if the commission was going to propose an increase here in order to provide some tax relief for lower income or lower middle income folks there, in other words, creating a more equitable system, but the council comes along and just does the tax increase and uses it for spending on some programs, then that increased revenue is no longer available to provide the tax relief that would make the system more equitable. I've put that out there, and I think some folks are conveniently choosing to not understand, but I think we should have a more equitable system, even though the city has the most equitable tax system of all the states, according to, I don't remember the exact name of the organization, but they study tax laws across the country. We have the most progressive tax. It still could be more so, and that's what I'd like us to do. And I'm afraid we're going to screw up that opportunity. Next question.
Are there penalties for DCPS for not getting teachers their contracts on time? What is the holdup?
Are there penalties for DCPS not getting a teacher's contract on time? No, unfortunately, there aren't. But the chancellor's been getting beat up. I think folks need to realize that maybe rather than beating up the chancellor, they should beat up the mayor, because the mayor could make this happen. To give you an example, the executive, that would be the mayor's Office of Labor Relations and Collective Bargaining, decided that the best time to bargain with the teachers was at 5 o'clock in the morning. They did that twice. The second time, I showed up, and a representative from Councilmember Bond's office showed up at 5 in the morning. And I think it was a little embarrassing to the executive that they were pulling this stunt. And since then, they've had no more 5 a.m. bargaining sessions, but they're scheduling about 2 a month, which I pointed out to the chancellor last week was about as slow as you can get. So I think the executive is not committed to having a contract. I find that very unfortunate. And I think the remedy there is political pressure on the mayor.
What is the status of the city's crime lab? It seems like they were about to become reaccredited a few months ago, but haven't heard anything since.
What's the status of the DC crime lab? And thought they were getting reaccredited. Well, the answer is they did get reaccredited in January, maybe even in late December. That would not be for all disciplines, but it would be, I think it was DNA analysis. My impression is that the lab is functioning, although I think the Science Advisory Board recently resigned, and that is an issue of concern because that was meant to be a check on the quality, like a quality assurance check. So yes, there's still some issues there, and the oversight is with the Committee on Judiciary and Public Safety, so that would be Councilmember Brooke Pinto. Lindsay?
OSSI is still failing with special education and transportation. It's been years. Are you ever going to hold them accountable?
OSSI is still failing with special ed transportation. It's been years. Am I ever going to hold them accountable? We actually discussed this at their budget hearing last week. Their on-time percentage is over 90%, if I remember correctly. A lot of the complaints are old, as in the transportation system has improved since those complaints. Is it perfect? No. Are there still problems? Yes. There's money in the budget to create a better GPS tracking so that parents will actually know where the bus is, because right now is not good enough, and that is the parents can find out when the bus has left the depot in the morning. Leaving the depot is, I think everybody agrees, is not the same as the bus being on time to the parent's house. And so there's room for improvement. And will they ever be held accountable? OSSI is forced to answer questions about this at every hearing, and there've been at least 2 so far this year.
I saw that the Attorney General took the owner of 1000 C Street to court. What else is DC government doing to get these vacant and blighted buildings back into public use?
Saw that the DC government took the owner of 1000 C Street, a vacant property, to court. What else is the city doing? 1000 C Street was probably the most egregious of the vacant property cases, where the property owner was continually being assessed as vacant and then getting the city to change the assessment. And I asked the Attorney General to look into this because I thought it violated the no, I can't think of the name of it. It's not the False Claims Act, yes. Violated the False Claims Act. And that was the basis for the prosecution, and the Attorney General won. Hopefully other property owners are going to recognize that lying about their vacant properties isn't going to help. We have a $5 tax rate for vacant properties and a $10 tax rate for blighted properties, blighted being, let's say, boarded up or parts of the structure in serious disrepair. I do know, because we've had quite a bit of oversight with the Department of Buildings, who's the one that actually classifies these buildings. They're taking steps to improve their enforcement actions. And as I said, the laws changed. It was actually an amendment I put through a few years ago over surprising opposition from some council members to amend the False Claims Act to include taxes. And that's how the Attorney General is able to bring the case. So I'm hopeful that we'll see more of this. My staff is also looking at the vacant property law to try to clarify it, make it easier to administer and enforce, but no bill's been introduced yet. Lindsay?
The OSSI Community Schools program was eliminated entirely, taking critical supports away from 17 schools like LAYC, support for teen mothers, immunization support, and more. What can you do to help restore this program?
The question has to do with community schools. Community schools is a program in OSSI, Office of the State Superintendent of Education, where a school will have what I call wraparound services. So it's not just simply the kid goes to school and learns reading, writing, and arithmetic. But there are other services, which could be, for instance, health services or mental health services um, that are available at the school. That's why it's called a community school. It's much more than just the traditional school. There are actually two programs. There's Connected Schools, which is DCPS. It's the same concept. And Community Schools, which was in OSSI. The mayor zeroed out the OSSI program. There was only one charter school, and the questioner said LAYC, so that must have been the only charter school. There is federal grant money available for this, and so individual charters could pursue those grants. And at the budget hearing a week ago, OSSI volunteered that they would be willing to work with and help schools, the LEAs, the charter LEAs, to identify the grants, and then DCPS could pursue more grant funding. So the idea of these community schools is not extinguished because it is alive and well in DCPS. But I don't see that, given everything, that we're going to be able to maintain the duplicate program at OSSI. Lindsay?
This is another pay equity question. If the council ultimately has to replenish the reserves ahead of schedule as advised by the CFO, how optimistic are you that the council will be able to find the funds for the pay equity fund?
All right, so the question has to do with pay equity fund again, and if the council has to replenish the reserves, how optimistic am I that we'll be able to fund the pay equity? All right, my answer is still the same. I intend to put a budget forward on May 28th that will fund the pay equity fund. Next question.
Follow up on the community schools. LAYC is servicing many of the DCPS community schools through the OSSI program, not just the charter school.
I don't have a response. It had to do with LAYC as funding, supporting a number of DCPS schools. That's kind of news to me, but I don't have a response. But I do appreciate that the person who came up with the question initially is still here and participating. Only wish I could see you.
Oops. But that's it. That's all.
That's it?
Mm.
Oh my goodness. We're going to end a few minutes early. I want to thank everyone for attending and for the questions. The council committees are continuing to have hearings too this month. The committee markups with their recommendations will be the first week in May. The committee of the whole is scheduled for May 10th. That's the last one. And then the next several weeks, the council members meet in a work session, and then I present the budget, I believe, on May 28th. And we will work to see if we can rearrange some of what the mayor did and restore a lot of what the mayor did and come up with a better budget. I have to say that the resources of the council's budget office are very good, and sometimes I think do better work than either the CFO or the mayor's budget office in terms of figuring out this budget. On the other hand, the mayor has 7 months to develop the budget, and we have 56 days between receipt from the mayor and our first vote. So that constrains us in what we can do. But it's lots of opportunities for public comment, and I think I'll leave it with that. I want to thank everyone for joining us. Lindsay, absolutely no more questions?
We had one more follow-up. In what ways can the funds be more efficient, and is there any evidence of the funds being misused? I assume pay equity.
In what ways can the funds be more efficient? Are there any evidence of funds being misused? And we're guessing that has to do with the pay equity fund. I don't have any information about abuse. I do know that the mayor thought that there could be some revisions to the pay equity program that would still affect the same results, but would be less costly. I don't know what those are. But I certainly think it's worth asking the question. What we see across the government in program after program after program is that programs could be administered more efficiently, more quickly, with less duplication. I mean, there are all kinds of ways of describing inefficiency. And usually those questions aren't asked, and they should always be asked. Sometimes the answer is that there isn't a change to be made, but sometimes there is. Like that example with the mom with the three kids. What's the problem with, they all go to the same school? What's the problem with putting the third kid on the same bus with the other two? But you got to ask the question. Thank you all, and we'll see you next month. I don't know if next month is virtual or live, but we'll see you all next month.